Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous et tous. It's wonderful to be here with you again. It was 6 years ago that I was last in Bruxelles as a speaker at your conference, and it's great to be back to speak on a slightly different theme. We had some fun just moments ago, bringing to the stage those people who represent the theme of this conference. Women, the role of women and youth in peace and stability and economic development in the Horn of Africa. It's a great theme. I want to thank the organizers for picking that theme and for inviting me to have this opportunity to come and to speak to you today. I have prepared a paper. Copies have been distributed electronically through the Afarforum. There's a few hard copies here today. I'm not going to read every element of what's in the paper. I'll just hit some keynotes for your comment and for your contribution and thoughtfulness during the next 3 days of your conference and then thereafter. The reason we're here on this stage and the reason the organizers have picked this theme for your conference is very simple. Often we get very preoccupied, very distracted by the politics of the circumstances that surround us and the very dire need for change, including improvement in the human rights situation that confront the Afar people everywhere. And that preoccupies most of our time as human rights activists, as opponents, as dissidents, and so forth. And that's a cause that needs to continue, and the fight must be, in fact, escalated. Having said that, it's very important not to forget that we need to continue and build a civil society, including an economy that's going to provide support for the next generation. And the next generation is really here with me on this table. And what I'm thinking of more particularly are Yasmin and Ali right here. We're fighting for them. We're fighting for their cousins back in the Afar Triangle. And we don't want to see their cousins and the parents of their cousins fleeing anymore from Eritrea, from Djibouti, and ending up in places like Ethiopia and Sudan and Yemen, and then having to be resettled into countries like the UK where Yasmin and Ali live. We want that generation to be empowered, to be enabled, and one of the great elevators for that to occur is through education, but also through a change in thinking, the evolution of a culture, the movement from traditional practices to modern thought. And that's why you, the organizers, have chosen this theme as your conference. So I commend you for doing that and gathering us here to address that topic. And that topic is not suitably addressed by me unless we are together, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, as we're represented right now on this stage. And although we had a little bit of fun and there was some shyness in getting these people with me on the stage, I think we laughed about it and we said, sure, why not? This is important, and it's not important for Warren Kreitz to stand here and to preach or lecture on this topic. It's actually most important for us to share the topic and be together as we now are physically, and as we will be in the days to come, the weeks, the months, the years to come, so that this is a symbol, but it's the evolution and the next steps of what we all are responsible for working at. So let's thank everyone first, and then I'll keep talking. OK, mon nom c'est Warren Creets, je suis avocat d'immigration et de droits de l'homme et de réfugiés et citoyenneté. Je suis un avocat depuis 28 ans. J'ai commencé mon travail avec les Afars, les peuples Afars, depuis 20 ans, au moins 20 ans. And it's through my role as a refugee lawyer that I learned about the Afar. I did about...
En français, s'il vous plaît.
En français, toujours? OK. Depuis 20 ans, je suis avocat pour les peuples Afar. Je représente les gens qui ont fait une demande de statut de réfugié au Canada. C'est à cause de ça. J'ai entendu que les circonstances d'Afar en Érythrée, en Djibouti, même en Éthiopie, c'est difficile. Alors, il y a 8 ans que Ahmed Youssef Mohamed et son collègue me visitaient dans mon bureau à cause d'un problème plus grand qu'une seule personne qui demande statut de réfugié au Canada. C'est une situation très grave pour les peuples Afar qui demeurent encore dans la région. Alors, il m'a invité de présenter aux conférences à l'Université de Carleton il y a 8 ans. À cette époque-là, j'ai reçu une invitation des peuples Afar qui demeurent à Ottawa, partout à Montréal et Toronto, pour faire un voyage. Pour moi, la première fois en Afrique, c'était toujours un rêve que j'ai eu à cette époque-là d'avoir une opportunité de faire une connexion avec les peuples dans la région. Because most of the time, Canadians want to go to Africa, they want to go on a safari. They want to take pictures of animals, and they want to have this fantastic African experience. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to connect to Africa. And to this day, I can tell you, I've led 9 missions to the Afar region, and I haven't once been distracted to go to Kenya or another country, South Africa, to go on a safari. It's just against my nature to take a holiday when I should be working for you and your people. I want to mix it English and French because il y a des Afars qui viennent d'Érythrée qui ne parlent pas français. Alors, c'est nécessaire pour moi de faire mon papier. Comme mon papier se fait en anglais et français, les deux, vous avez une copie de ça, c'est partagé en les 2 langues. Ça, c'est les 2 langues officielles de Canada. Et ça, c'est mon responsabilité aujourd'hui de parler en 2 langues. Alors, j'ai voyagé la première fois en 2008, janvier, partout en région Afar en Éthiopie, parce que j'ai toujours condamné les gouvernements d'Érythrée et Djibouti. Ce n'est pas possible pour moi de voyager là-bas, parce que les 2 gouvernements sont contre les droits de l'homme et contre Warren Creets. Alors, c'est toujours nécessaire pour moi d'être le plus proche et visiter les réfugiés qui viennent des 2 pays, qui sont dans les villes, dans les villages, dans les camps de réfugiés qui étaient créés en Éthiopie. Et j'ai fait beaucoup des interviews avec les sages, les femmes, les jeunes, les politiciens qui sont élus en Éthiopie et partout. And it's really as a result of those many trips that I've come to understand your circumstances and come to commit considerable resources, time, and thought and creativity to what I can do and what my network of people in the world can do to help. So we started an NGO. Nous avons créé une fondation qui s'appelle Cav Go Afar Foundation, Cav Go Afar. And we're a foreign donor. We have local partners, and we pick projects with those local partners to try to improve the circumstance, building capacity, but also providing relief. 80% of what we do is building capacity, so it's santé, l'eau, éducation pour les jeunes, particulièrement les filles. Eh? We're helping your cousins. We're funding education, we're providing them clothes, food, nutrition, healthcare, and so forth, so that your cousins have better chances for the future. And we've got about 3,000 beneficiaries now that I've been able to count. And we've made a lot of progress, and we're doing it on many different fronts, and we want to provide capacity building and education and so forth in Eritrea and Djibouti. We haven't been able to do that just yet, but it's just a question of time before we find the right mechanisms, the right partners in those countries. I don't need to go there, but we can send expertise, we can send capacity, we can send money. But while we're not in those countries, we're doing advocacy, which is at least as important, I think, for the big picture, including, you will learn in your coming days from Ahmed Yusuf. We met yesterday with the EU, the European Union, and in particular the officers responsible for the Horn of Africa, who are building policy for that region. And we hope to become an important source of information, but also an important source of recommendations to the EU on what they can and should be doing to develop a policy that's effective, so that change and improvements, political, economic, and development can occur for the Afar people. So my paper is on this topic. You've picked a great one for your conference, and I've tried to address it. I've given you examples in the paper. I want you to read it. I want you to think about the examples. One particularly useful example for the region, but also elsewhere in the world, is microfinancing. All right? Using us as an example, the Cav Go Afar, the Fondation Cav Go Afar, veut faire des investissements dans la famille, to work with local partner NGOs to select families who have ideas and who have entrepreneurship, but just don't have the right mechanism to achieve that. I brought today a couple of examples. An example. When I was last in Afar region last year, you look at the beadwork that's being done by the women there. It's gorgeous and it's beautiful. It's a way of preserving culture, but also a way of transmitting it. And very importantly, could be used as a mechanism to enable women to supplement income, to go from peasant agriculture in a period of transition whereby they're being forced to settle, where their lands are being sold and leased on concession to mining companies, to agricultural companies. They're losing their land, they're losing their traditional way of life. This is a process that's been underway for decades, but is now accelerating, and is, in my mind, I'm reluctant to say this to you, but I think you probably realize it, it's irreversible. It's not going to stop just because we want it to stop. So we have to learn, and we have to develop ways of surviving during these difficult times of transition, whereby the culture will go from, in one generation probably, will go from being nomads to being settled. All my ancestors and Western ancestors were hunters and gatherers, and it took generations, hundreds of years, to go from being hunters and gatherers and nomads to settling. Well, now this is happening into the Afar in one generation, sometimes less. So how do you cope with this? Well, we have to work at enabling youth to speak up and say, we have rights too, and we want to be at the table. We want education. There isn't a single family I have not met, there's not one single family I've met that doesn't want more education. wants better health care. They want economic opportunity. And it's up to us who are now part of the diaspora to enable that, to facilitate that, to encourage that, to motivate. And that's going to take a change in culture to have women who have had very traditional roles in the Afar culture. From collecting firewood and water and looking after children and cooking and so forth, to incubating them to think a little differently. So maybe some can commercialize something that is already there and very deeply enriched in the culture, so that this can be sold outside the region. And I don't mean just to tourists, but to others in the world. There's a way, other cultures have done it, to use microfinance to support already existing crafts, already existing forms of culture, whether it's music and clothing and beadwork and the stitching work that I've seen. This is what we need to do. It's a starting point. This is what we need to do. And then from that entrepreneurship will come new ideas and other opportunities, so that they're selling not to each other only, but to other clans and tribes in the region, including those clans and tribes with whom there is conflict. Why can't we sell to them? Why cannot we provide services to them? And this is a way of incubating respect, understanding, cross-pollination, and so forth. The world has done it in other places, and it's our turn. It's our time. And this is being done in Afghanistan, which has suffered a lot of conflict. And lots of NGOs have gone in there and provided microfinancing to women particularly, so that they have a means to increase their household income when a father, a husband, has been lost, or to duplicate or supplement income to the household, so that money can be used to provide more education for the children. It's cyclical. So we need to invest in each other. We need to invest in small-scale enterprise so that learning takes place. And our NGO wants to be part of that. My job in all of this is to be a spark plug, to ignite change, to motivate ideas, to bring people together, to listen, to learn what you want, and try, in my way, to make it happen. That's what I've been doing for 8 years, and I don't see that stopping, ever. Mm-hmm. I don't want to lose you, and I hope you don't want to lose me in this, okay? No. So, that's my main message, okay? When I get down into the details in my paper, I look at the unemployment rate that's in that region. In Djibouti, it's 60% in Djiboutieville, the main capital city. Outside of there in the rural area where the Afar are northern, it's at least 80% unemployment. Again, peasant agriculture, which is very risky. The Afar are very vulnerable to not just drought, but to disease in their livestock and so forth. The climate and the circumstances. Welcome, come on in, please. Join the group, come forward, please. So we've got to spread the risk across different forms of income generation. Another message that I share with you will not be news, but for those that haven't, either are not Afar or haven't been there, is how moderate the Afar are, how hospitable the Afar are. A people that has so little will share it first with others, strangers, welcoming me and my entourage when we go there. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. And I get inspired by that. And if that's the resourcefulness of the people, then we need to ignite that resourcefulness to achieve political change, yes, but also to achieve economic change. And when the women of the culture, quand les femmes reçu une opportunité d'éducation et puis l'entrepreneurship, this is the chance. All boats will float higher. And studies have been done by the World Bank, by the UN and others, that if a society doesn't incubate equality, education, health, opportunity for its women, then the whole culture is held back from development. So we need to do that. You've seen it in the countries that you're now in Europe, North America, New Zealand and Australia and so forth. You've seen it happen successfully there with the societies in those places that treat women equally. And we need to do that. We need to sometimes look in the mirror at ourselves and say, what are we doing that's harmful? What are the harmful practices? Where are the barriers? Where are the inhibitors? How can we overcome some of these? How can we lessen them? How can we shrink them, reduce them, erase them, so that the women get a fair and full opportunity to speak, to be heard, but also to contribute, to be enabled. And that's what this conference is about. I know the organizers wanted this theme to come out and wanted it to be spoken of frankly, so that in the discussions in these 3 days and beyond, we can really do better, all of us, for the single cause. As we work parallel with the political side and the humanitarian relief side, we must create change and must incubate opportunity for women and youth, so that, yeah. That is the reason I'm here. That is the reason I stay involved. You have wonderfully welcomed myself, my family, my wife, my own children. Mon femme a déjà visité Afar 2 fois. Et nous sommes maintenant en train de faire les planifications pour un 10e voyage, pour une mission de à peu près 14 personnes avec ma femme. Mon fils était là 1 fois, mon fils était là 3 fois. So all of this to say that there isn't a person I know that I haven't told about you, that I haven't told about what we're doing. And I will continue to do that. And as long as doors remain open, as long as we're not a closed society, as long as we're open to change, as long as the policymakers and the governments will listen to us, and those that don't listen to us, we have other mechanisms to get to them by filing complaints with the UN against Eritrea and having a special rapporteur. You've seen all that, of the investigation, and it was done by work that Professor Joe Magnet did. And he worked very closely to acquire the depositions of many refugees who had come out of Eritrea, and that's very important work, so that more pressure is put on Eritrea to stop the harmful practices and the persecution and the colonialization of their lands. All of this is together. We need to think of it in a big sense and then focus on the doable, so that we're continue moving forward. Baby steps, and then walking, and then running. And I think, if I look back at the last 8 years, I think we're now at the walking stage. We've done the baby steps, and we're now walking. And in sometimes the walking becomes a run and a bit of a sprint. And there's a little barrier, a little, bar that we have to jump a little higher over. And I know by your presence here today, you come from countries and jobs and families that you've had to give up for these days. It's very tough to come together, but I'm glad that you do that every 2 years. I'm glad that you care enough that you come at your own expense to come to Brussels here which is a very important place, the center of government for the whole of the EU, a very powerful trading bloc, a very powerful force in politics, not just for Europe, but the world. We need to do this, and we need to publish what we're saying. We need to put it on websites so that the world sees what you are capable of, and me helping and listening and learning and contributing. So I want to thank the organizers for picking this theme. I want to thank everyone.
Je voudrais remercier tous les peuples qui sont à la table avec moi maintenant. Merci beaucoup d'être ici, par votre présence à côté de moi. Pour le titre de cette conférence, vous avez voté pour changement et création d'une opportunité qui avançait les causes des femmes et avançait les causes des jeunes. Didn't we do that?
We did.
We did. Thank you.